It's wonderful to have you, Pradipto. You've got a really interesting career, and your path has been so very inspirational. Tell us about your journey when you began in India from the lovely state of Bengal, if I'm correct, West Bengal. Yeah, and your journey all the way up to the hallowed grounds of Hollywood and at DreamWorks.
I love sketching. I love reading storybooks. Like a lot of my early days was reading Satyajit and Jules Verne. And then as a kid, though I wanted to make movies, it was really difficult. It was really difficult because I come from Dhanbad, which is a town in eastern India, in Jharkhand. And it was really difficult. I really didn't know how to become a filmmaker. I guess when I was in ninth standard, that's the first time when I came across animation as a medium. And that seemed pretty interesting. I was like, okay, this is something which looks interesting. This is probably that can let me become a filmmaker. But as it goes, traditional studies and stuff like that, I I didn't pursue it for a very long time. I actually did my graduation in biotechnology, so went and did BSc. I guess it was 2006. There was one day I was watching Madagascar, the first one, and the movie somehow moved me. That's what made me feel like, oh wow, this looks gorgeous, and probably this is something that I really want to do. And then I started finding out how I can get into the world of animation. I So the first thing that happened is that there was a Arena Multimedia Center in Dhanbad. There was just one of them. So it was my summer vacation. I enrolled myself over there because I absolutely, as a kid, I never had access to computer. I basically had no clue how to even do anything in 3D or even like draw or anything in computers. So I was basically a clueless kid. I ended up there. It was my summer vacations for 2 months. I basically enrolled myself in Arena Multimedia. I basically convinced my dad that I let me try this. Let me see if I want to like leave my studies and get into the field of animation. But before that, I actually wanted to, convince myself that this is something that I can do. So I enrolled myself. I would go up there. Usually the classes there would be like for 2 hours. Okay. But I would go the first boy in the institute like at 9 a.m. I would be practicing till 6 p.m. every day. Okay. And soon what happened is that all the faculties over there, they were very nice. Okay. None of them had any industry experience, but what probably they really liked was me sitting there trying to learn, and all of them, they were very enthusiastic, and I would really appreciate, they took too much of effort to teach me everything that they knew at that point of time. So my 2 months over there gave me the first confidence that this is something that I can probably do in future. Okay. So that convinced me to leave my biotech studies and take up animation. My first job was at Big Animation in Pune, and I was working on the Little Krishna animated series. So the journey started over there. I started as a rigger, and soon we had something. The studio newly started doing fur. There were not enough fur artists at that point of time. So that's something they wanted somebody to try out. And I was a curious kid back then. I was just an intern. It started, and I raised my hand, you know, that I want to try it out. And that's how my journey into what today we call a CFX, it started from there. I pretty much worked there, learned for, and then I moved to Crest Animation Studios. Crest was at that point of time doing their first animated movie, which was, and that's the other thing that I would say that I was always very fortunate to work. Even in India, I was very fortunate to work on projects that were like IPs. So that IP project always gives you a lot more freedom to express yourself. So I worked on Crest. I worked on the fur of characters. I helped them set up their pipeline. And Alpha Mega, of course, was one of the first stereoscopic movies that came out of India. So that was good fun over there. And that basically helped me get my first job at DreamWorks Animation India, which had just started. So that honestly was, like a dream come true job. Like I still remember when the first time I watched How to Train Your Dragon. As a kid, I only wanted to watch the second part. Like I never thought that I would end up at a place like DreamWorks. So I was lucky to, I still consider myself lucky that I got a job over there, offered to join there. And then my first movie was Puss in Boots, started on that as a CFX artist. Then I got to work over the years on How to Train Your Dragon 2, and then on Boss Baby. And in between, also Madagascar 3. Madagascar, of course, as I mentioned, it was one of the first movies that basically inspired me to take up animation as a career. So all that, I worked in India until 2017, and post that, that's when I moved to Pace FX in China. There's again a new startup studio, an entirely different culture. It was tricky. It was difficult because it was a different language and all of that. But it was fun over there because the only thing that I learned over there is that when you're passionate about making a movie, language really doesn't matter. Like all bunch of people who had one common intention of making an international quality movie, and that's what Wish Dragon was, which basically got nominated last year for Annie Awards. And it was a great experience working over there. And then in 2018, I got a call from DreamWorks. I interviewed, and that's how I landed up in US and into my dream job, the studio that I always wanted to work for, DreamWorks in California. Came here, I moved here, I started on Abominable, and then post that, I was the lead on Boss Baby and on Puss in Boots, which is coming out this year. And I'm a CFX supervisor right now. That's pretty much what my journey is when I started my career. Like the biggest challenge is that I also studied from Ramakrishna Mission School, which is like one of the best school in West Bengal. And the traditional Indian society, one of the biggest challenges. When we started back in 2006-7, there was hardly any awareness of animation industry. Like it was more in Bombay and Bangalore in pockets, but in Jharkhand, probably not enough. Okay. Like compared to that, what there is today is way more. Like people have a lot more awareness. So that was, of course, very challenging at that point in time. And getting the first job, it's very difficult during those days. There were not too many options. To get your first job was really a difficult thing. So get that. As soon as I started my career, 2007, 2008, that was also the time when recession happened. So there was absolutely not too many options during that point of time across the industry. Okay. So that way you had to excel at what you do. That was the only way to survive in the industry. So I guess that's what they're.
You've gone through different cultures. You've been, there's understand it's all about talent, but in studios often there is cliquism, there is politics, there's a new Indian coming in. Did you encounter any of that wherever you went, or they just accepted you because you're talented? And was there any other challenge like that? Was it a challenge of adjustment to living in a different country, being flexible?
I would say I was rather fortunate that I never encountered or never felt that I'm an outsider coming in to a new studio or that kind of thing. I feel like I have been always very well supported. Even when I went to Pace or DreamWorks is, of course, the best place to work. So none of that has been a very big issue. Okay. Though, yes, China was difficult in a way is that the culture was very different. The language was very big issue. Okay. So part of my role was to build up the team, mentor them over there. Okay. And how do you mentor people when you do not speak the same language. So I feel like that's one of the most challenging tasks that I have ever done, was like helping to build a team in China while working on the movie, and as well as building a pipeline. Okay. Um, Making a pipeline in a new studio is always one of the most challenging tasks. So, but at the same time, it was very fulfilling because you really work out well as a team. Okay. It had that startup energy, that kind of a thing over there. So I thoroughly enjoyed my stint at China. Okay. And yeah, the difficulty was, of course, there was no other life beyond work. Okay. Or at least I didn't have much. Okay. So I pretty much at that point of time, I would say, I was building this character long, and I almost got like very emotionally attached to that character as a person would get attached to their pet dogs, like that kind of thing. Okay. So even my weekends would be often just spending trying to build that character. And that's probably what I did for 10 months. That's probably what kept me motivated during that entire time period. Yeah. So that was my stint at China. Of course, moving countries is always a big task, in general, a very big challenge. You have to get adjusted to new culture. You have to get adjusted to new people and stuff like that. So all of that was there, and I initially moved to US also alone. Okay. My wife joined me a little later in that front. Okay. Yeah, but I would say like it's probably the best thing. Like LA has a very great vibe to it. Okay. Like the city, you can see so many filmmakers coming from different parts of the world in this place. And the city has a great creative energy, something that you would only see probably in Bombay. Mumbai has some very similar kind of creative energy. So that's the energy that you would see over here. And it just enriches and makes you a better filmmaker over the time. Yeah.
Is are we seeing many more Indian voices emerging in animation, and why is this happening? And do we see more? Is it encouraging signs? Do we see many more Indian voices emerging in studios in Hollywood, in studios in England?
India has a lot of talented artists. Okay, there's no doubt in it. You look at any country at this point of time, there are a lot of Indian animators working and at very good positions. Okay. But what probably also needs to happen is what we are probably not doing enough is retaining enough Indian talent back in the country. And there's this twofold issue to it. One is, of course, making high quality animation from India. Okay. And now the high quality animation from India for India would only happen if the masses in India would love or start appreciating animation more. That's like a chicken and egg situation. If you look at the rest of the world, there are people of all ages do enjoy animation versus India, where it is still looked at more as a kids entertainment thing, So that's one of the big challenges when I look at what's happening in India. But at the same time, there is a lot of studios that are coming up, both Indian and international studios. If you look at it, every other big studio or major studio in the world right now has a branch in India. Okay. And then there are like studios in India that are trying to expand to the other parts of world. So these are very encouraging signs overall for Indian animation and VFX industry. I guess what needs to happen more is we'll have to find out a way to make more IPs and better stories that can, um, cater to all the different audience section in India, like kids as well as adults. Like before COVID, studios never thought that they never thought animation or VFX can be done remotely. Okay. But I guess what pandemic taught us is that we can do our work from anywhere in the world. Okay. So Of course, there has been issues because of COVID. It has become a little difficult to move, but at the same time, because of the remote work opportunity, people can sit at home and do work for the best studios in the world, across the world. So that has opened up. And how would you get into there? Of course, to get into any of the bigger studios, okay, specialization is a must. Okay, in a way, I would say is like it's always good to know all the discipline because that makes you a better artist. But at the same time, to produce the highest quality of work, I feel one needs to be a specialist. Okay. So I would say like jack of all trades, but you still have to be master of one. Okay, to to match to the quality that comes out of Disney, DreamWorks, or even like Weta, ILM, those kind of places. And yeah, I can say what we do in CFX. Okay, so CFX is one of the most relatively new departments in the animation industry. It probably, I don't think it's more than 20-25 years old as a department. Okay. So what traditionally, when things moved from 2D to 3D, it was predominantly animation and effects where things started from. Okay. And as things moved, you realize that there is more need of cloth, hair, those kind of simulation, and that's what CFX department was built for. So that's a department that basically deals with cloth and hair simulation. And since it is so new, and also not a lot of studios teach CFX because it's a highly dependent department on animation. You basically need to have a good quality animation to do CFX on it. Okay. So most of the CFX artists that you find across the world are trained in studios. Like they have started as something else, like a rigger or a modeler or a FX artist or something like that. They get into studios and then they get introduced to CFX and they get trained and then become CFX artists. So that's one area where we lack a lot of workforce. And I really feel like, there could be two things. Institutes can take up teaching CFX more. And at the same time, I would encourage a lot of people, if you're interested in CFX, you can definitely think of that as a discipline, which you can take up that has a lot of global opportunity as of this moment, I think. And at the same time, that it also has a lot of opportunity in India. Okay. Like it's one of the spaces where we are really lacking artists, defines me. I feel like I have always loved what I do. Okay. Um, like this is something that I always wanted to do. And at times when I look back at it, I feel like I'm really fortunate that there are very few people who get the opportunity to make their hobby as their career. Okay. And I feel like I'm one of those fortunate person. Yeah. As a kid, I love to paint. I love to do comics and stuff like that. Now I feel like, oh, I'm making those movies. I'm pretty much living my dream. And at times I feel like I'm also getting paid for it. Like, who gets paid for doing his hobby? So as a person, I'm extremely work ahead. And yes, I always emphasize on work-life balance. But at the same time, this is something I love to do so much that yeah, it at times it's difficult, to put that stop. Okay. And and animation is something that I really live for. Uh, that's something that I can just say about it. But thank you, Cam Summit, for giving me this opportunity to speak to all of you. And I hope that there are a lot of brilliant students, there are a lot of brilliant artists that comes out of India. And I hope more and more students who take up animation as their career. There are a lot of people, um, who are there today to guide you, probably the kind of guidance we never got. Okay. Also with social media and LinkedIn and all of it, it's so much more easier to reach out, so much more easier to know what's happening across the world. Okay. And I'm sure at any point of time, if you would try to reach out to any experienced artist in India, they would all help you to grow up and take this as a career. Okay. On the same notes, if you ever want to reach out to me, you can always find me on LinkedIn. Okay, to connect. And if you have any questions, I would be always happy to answer them.